we're bringing you all you need to succeed in the real estate business. It's Spilling the LT, brought to you by Lawyers Title, telling you what it's really like to work in real estate.
Today we're going to talk about everyday challenges in the real estate transaction contract to close. But first, I'm Tamera Gaede. I'm your host of another episode of Spilling the LT. And if you like the content that we're putting out, I hope that you'll give us an opportunity to earn your business. And in order to do that, you need to have a chance to get to know my escrow team. So I'm very excited about my guest today. Today I have on the show with me Kelly Berry, who is our branch manager of the Frisco office, but also one of our escrow officers. She's got 21 years in the business. And I also have with me Rachel Shelton, who is one of our vice presidents and escrow officers in our Frisco office as well. She's been doing this for 11 years. And the really cool part about this is I have the number one and number two top escrow officers in our company. And they are within the top 10% in our Fidelity family of companies nationwide. So these ladies really know their stuff. And I'm blessed to have them come on the show with me today. You know, I came on board with Lawyers Title, it's been almost 4 years now, and they already had really established relationships and businesses. And one of the really special parts of coming into this particular office is that they were really welcoming to me, and we've really collaborated as team members and also as friends. And so I think it gives us a really special environment, and it comes across to our clients and to the people that we partner with. So I couldn't wait to have them on the show because, well, we all know this is an extremely aggressive market, and there's a lot of challenges that are happening because of the inventory shortage and the rise in interest rates and how aggressive things are for our lender and realtor partners. And so I just kind of wanted them to come in, talk a little bit today about their background, how their teams operate, what makes us special, because there's a lot of things that make us special. And then just kind of address some of the common threads that we're seeing every day in our real estate transactions when the contract comes into closing. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Rachel and Kelly. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for
having us.
I'm super excited, ladies. I haven't had you on the show yet, and so I feel like that's just my fault. But I think that we did a lot of prep for today, and we wanted to make sure that what we were talking about would bring a lot of value to the people that will hear this podcast. So before we get started and dive into some of the questions, let's talk about your backgrounds a little bit. How did you build your team? Who's on your team? How you got here? Kind of what you enjoy best about your business. Kelly, let's start with you.
So my team, I really consider my team the entire Frisco office since I manage.
It is.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I started this team in 2011. That's when Keith Williams brought me over to Lawyers Title. And, you know, we started with 3 people. And we've built that team to 16 people now.
It's incredible,
and,
like the growth that our office has enjoyed over the last,
Yeah.
even just couple of years, and few years since I've been on board.
Absolutely. So, you know, I can honestly say I didn't do it by myself. There's been, you know, a lot of helping hands along the way. Definitely, you know, you have to have the business in order to build a team. So really, it was about building the business in order to have a team. So, you know, we were able to recruit the right people and that had the business, build on that business, and then we were able to add, you know, support staff. You know, our leadership team of Brandy and Keith, you know, they were very good at recruiting the right people. And, you know, we brought on escrow officers like Rachel, and
Yep.
we brought on, you know, Christy, Jackie, and all these ladies had business, which allowed us to, grow the support team as well. And then we have, you know, our great salespeople, which are you, George, and Christine. And so bringing in that business has, you know, allowed us to grow our team even bigger. So, you know, I really attribute it to all the people that, you know, I work with.
Well, and I think one of the really special things about our office is that we also have a lot of fun together. You know, I come into the office, I'll pop in for an hour or two and cause a big ruckus and ask everybody what's going on, and we talk about TikToks and we laugh a lot, and you know, so I think that it's just really that culture that we have in our office that I think makes us really special and makes us work really cohesively together, you know?
Definitely.
And we've enjoyed a lot of success because of it. And so part of that has to do with you, Rachel. Why don't you talk about your team, Miss Number One in the company?
Thank you. Well, I joined the Lawyers Title family in 2017, and since then we've grown quite a bit. I have 3 young ladies on my team, which are fantastic. I attribute a lot of our success to them directly.
They're amazing.
I can't do everything. Yes, they're amazing. It allows me to get away and do things like this every once in a while. I think that one of the things that have made me successful at Lawyers Title is servant leadership. I think that Kelly, I think that Brandy and Keith are all servant leaders, meaning they build us up and give us all the resources to be successful instead of dictatorship style. Yeah. So, and that's how I run my team. And I think that's what's made it very successful, is making my girls happy makes the work go better.
Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly.
You know, it applies to the team as well.
Yes, it does.
Well, I think, you know, if you're in real estate right now, you're just working your tail off all of the time. And, you know, especially during starting March of 2020 going through last year, I mean, you guys were working tirelessly to make sure that, you know, everything closed on time and was super smooth, and, you know, that, and you're really good at helping me as a salesperson keep our clients happy, which is a big key to our partnership, because I can't do everything that I do without you. And we were I was kind of talking about that this morning when I rolled in, all a little frazzled, is that, you know, you have to have that escrow officer partner and buy-in to keeping our clients, because we have a lot of competition out there, and it's super aggressive. And so, and no one person can do it by themselves. And I think that's kind of what that resonates what you just said, is that we're all a team and we all have team members, and making sure that we work hard and play hard and are really happy together, I think is super important. Yeah. So, you know, I thank you so much to both of you for helping me with my success, for sure. So, let's kind of dive right in. I'm one of those kind of ladies, so let's get into the meat. You know, we've been talking, there's been a lot of things that have come up because of this market, right? And they have become challenges, not just for you guys, but also our realtor and lender clients. And I always like to talk about common threads of what's happening. You know, what are we seeing that we're having to deal with over and over and over again? And can you guys shed some insight about the best practice, the way to move through a challenge? We always want to present a challenge and then present a solution, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing, let's talk about contract terminations, because October 2020 is when I remember seeing the termination skyrocket. It was incredible how many people were putting in contracts terminating, but we all know the reasons why the contracts were terminating, right? But there's also logistical concerns. You go under contract, you terminate, you're in the middle of the option. And so one of the things you guys started seeing was the earnest and option money not being delivered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So who wants to take that one and kind of address?
I can do that.
What we've been seeing, and then how we as a title company are kind of working through those things with our realtor partners.
Yeah. Some of the phone calls that I've received over the past 2 years have a lot to do with buyers not depositing earnest and option money. And of course, the contract changed to where we're now receiving the option.
Yay.
Yes, I know. So yes, you have to have option and earnest money to make a valid contract. However, you can't really force a buyer to turn it in. So we kind of recognize a new contract being executed as the seller's acknowledgement of that first termination if we don't receive option and earnest money. So that's kind of how we've had to roll with that, because we're not debt collectors, and we can't chase after everyone who doesn't want to pay option. I mean, sometimes realtors aren't even in contact with their buyers anymore after they refuse to pay the option and earnest money.
Right.
So it's kind of impossible for us too. So that's kind of how my team has been working everything. Kelly, are you?
I mean, same challenges that Rachel's team has. You know, it's really hard for us to chase down buyers when they don't want to, you know, deposit those funds
Well,
with us.
you can't make someone do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can't make anyone do anything. Actually, I wish we could, but we can't.
How this would change,
right? But yeah, I mean, same challenges for all the escrow officers in the office. Yeah.
And I think that's probably a pretty common thread. One of the other things that this isn't on my note sheet, and so don't expect all of my questions to be on my note sheet.
Okay.
One of the things I remember being on vacation, sitting down around top in some sort of vintage shop, digging through old stuff, and get a call from one of our clients, Kelly, and the contract terminated. We had the earnest money. They wanted the earnest money. Nobody was releasing the earnest money. And what do you do? And so that was another common thing that I think came out of it. They did deliver earnest and option, and the contract terminated, and it's past the option period, right? But now we've got to fight over the earnest money and who wins and who gets the earnest money. And so I think, I started hearing about negotiations, about splitting it and those sorts of things. But a lot of the resolution has been, here's their referral to a real estate attorney,
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the important part to kind of take out of this is we can't get in the middle of all of those fights. And some of this comes down to a legal issue and
definitely
issues between the contracted parties, right? And we've got to kind of do our best to help as much as we can. But, the dog fight's got to continue outside of the title company.
Someone will eventually give in because they want to sell their house. That's what ends up happening. But I always tell both parties they need to come to an agreement because at the end of the day, that's what has to happen.
Okay, question. Contract terminates. We still have earnest money. Backup contract comes in. Any issues with that?
Well, we usually require that the earnest money is resolved, the dispute on the prior, before we will close on a second. Yeah. That's the conversation that we have with our agents.
Everybody's it's so hot and so hard and so aggressive right now. And I know that that's also a common issue that we're having to deal with too.
They're ready to jump on the next one immediately and roll forward when we're not done with the first one. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think the fact that I had a client post on Facebook, I need a real estate attorney. And I called her, I was like, I love you, honey, but we are called Lawyers Title.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can help you with a real estate attorney.
Right.
And so I think that's a good thing to understand is that, we want to help our clients as much as possible, but there is a point in which we need to have an attorney step in and kind of help navigate through the waters.
Right. And our attorneys don't actually do that. We'll refer someone to a partner of ours to assist with them. It needs to be a neutral third party.
But I think it's really good that we have such a strong relationship, with
Definitely.
the ones that we do refer. Mm-hmm. We don't, they understand the situation and always make you guys look good at the end of the transaction. Sure. So that's super important. Kind of moving on to the next topic. So we've had a big change this year in the homestead exemption laws. And I am getting some questions about, what is the new, what are we supposed to do now, right? So do you guys want to kind of talk about the change, like what the new homestead exemption law is and how this affects the buyer and the seller once they close on the transaction?
Sure. Some of this is still kind of in the unknown because this is our first year, but now you can immediately file for your homestead exemption, whereas in the past you had to wait through January 1. So if you purchased in the middle of the year, you had to wait to file your exemption. But now you can do it immediately. We are passing out the applications at closing, but you can do it online with the Central Appraisal
District. Yeah, I saw a big stack of that stuff in the office.
And the applications are not updated yet. We checked with the Central Appraisal District yesterday, and it still says you have to wait, but you can do it immediately now. The unknown that we have is, in the past, disabled veteran, disabled person over 65, if that person were to move and take that exemption with them, the exemption they had on the property would lift from the property, meaning the end buyer would be subject to the full tax bill. So we're thinking that that's going to be something that happens with homestead now. If a person sells a house and they buy a new house, that exemption's also going to lift. But we can never really
explain how it lifted.
So, they move it. So they remove it from the previous property, meaning the buyer from their sale, would not receive that benefit for the year, which is how the other exemptions work. And now that you can file this one immediately, we're thinking, again, you can never tell what they're going to do until they do it.
Sure.
That it's also going to lift. And so that buyer would not have that exemption.
So buyer buys house, buyer calls the appraisal the county, right? And says, I want to file my homestead exemption. They turn in the paperwork. And then we think that they're also going to have to say, I need to remove it from my previous property, or that would be part of the application.
Right. So because people that are selling homes are also buying homes, they're going to want to move their exemption because you can immediately file it, meaning you have to call and have it removed from the previous property.
Right.
So in the past, our buyers are used to having that full benefit through the end of the year, at least on homestead.
Yeah.
We think that will change.
So the paperwork or the materials that we've kind of posted about it, and I had this question from a realtor, is when this year, like, is there a deadline, or, when they can file their homestead? The forms that we have say they have through the end of the year.
Right.
So they have to still file in the current year that they bought the house. It just doesn't matter how fast or how slow they do it, just as long as they do it within the year.
Right. I mean, everyone should try to, if you're buying a home, get your driver's license updated, because you'll have to have the new address on your driver's license to be eligible to file. Once you have that done, it just needs to be something that you do immediately.
Well, and because the tax benefit applies right away.
It does. Yeah.
Right. So the longer you wait, the more you're paying higher taxes on your house.
Take it if you can get it.
That?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of important. And, I think it's key that we're kind of providing information to the new buyer about what to do. That's a big deal. Especially with the change, people just have to, it takes a minute for people to understand the process.
Sure.
Any idea, and I'm not trying to pigeonhole you, but any idea how fast it would, can they do that? What has to happen before they can do that?
Again, just your driver's license updated. They can file it as long as the county has it updated by the time the tax bill comes out.
That's what I'm trying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they'll update it before then. It's not like you can really, you could go to the website and see if there's an exemption on there, but they've been so far behind for years that during COVID, they got behind. So it may not even say that, but once you get your tax bill, it should be on there.
Okay. Anything else you guys think they need to know? People need to know about homestead exemption? Do it.
Yeah. Do it fast.
Let's talk about fraud.
Oh,
let's talk about how we keep information secure, how we help make sure that our clients receive the right instructions from the right people, how we help make sure that, we don't have some sort of issue with funds not being received by us, because we know there's a lot of overseas buyers right now, and we've had everybody's had a lot of situations where somebody's reaching out to an agent, wants to buy a house. They may or may not be a real buyer.
Correct. Some of that, yes, it's been interesting.
But there's also everyone that has a responsibility to help keep information secure, right? And I think we're really, really good at keeping information secure. So
yes.
Do you want to take this one, Kelly, where we kind of talk about the process?
Definitely. So the way to keep people's information secure, so we like to gather information up front from our buyers and sellers. That just helps us process the transaction. There's certain information that we need from sellers and buyers to help us, process the file. So we have an application now called In Here. And as long as we have your client's cell phone number and email address, an email will go out to your clients. And that's what allows us to gather this pertinent information in a secure fashion. So, so that's one thing that we've implemented, within the past year. Another thing, that's really big is, wire fraud, obviously. Yeah. People are really reluctant to send wires these days because of all the wire fraud that's happened. But the way to avert wire fraud really is for us to send those wiring instructions to you securely.
To the buyer,
to the end buyer
only. Yes. This is very important, kids.
This is very important. So we have a lot of times where realtors will ask us to send, those wiring instructions to them, and that's really a no-no. I mean, they don't want to be.
Nobody wants to take that on.
Involved in that, right? So really, we only need to be sending the wiring instructions to the buyer only.
Yeah.
And then also, part of that in here, part of that process, they're signing off on our wire fraud alert.
Yeah.
So that's in the process. It's telling them what our wiring instructions are. And it's also telling them if you receive wiring instructions that deviate from anyone else, they're fraudulent. And they sign off on that.
And I think, the hard part is these email addresses, these emails come from what looks like a super valid resource, right? But they're not. And we go through, which have y'all done your training yet? I know Rachel is on your to-do list. Yeah. We go through, I think that's one of the things that separates us as part of the Fidelity family of companies is that they do take constant training, constant ways to look for things. We have special triggers in our emails that we can report phishing emails. They're very secure. And so I think that that's one of the things that makes us really special is the fact that we have to do so much ongoing due diligence and staying on top of these things. And so, as an investor, I've bought several houses and we've closed all of them with lawyers because why would I close anywhere else? And that's been a deal. I was like, this is a deal breaker.
Of course.
Else. But I've been through the in here process of the mobile deposit feature and providing my information. And
I think it's pretty simple.
Super easy.
Great way to collect it, and it's all electronic. Your people don't have to fill anything out.
You literally fill out some blanks.
Yeah.
Take a picture of your check, and you're done. It takes less than 5 minutes, and it's super secure. So, and then you always get the email, the secure email, right, with the wiring instructions. And I think it's you guys have talked about this several times, where it's good for the buyer to pick up the phone and call you directly.
Yeah, our wiring instructions actually have the procedure on what to do on how to verify them. So you call our office and how to go back and forth to verify them.
Yeah.
Super important that people do that.
I think in this age, you can't be too careful because you send funds to the wrong place. What are the chances you're going to get them back? Yeah.
Not great.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And we've had some of those, not very often, but I've maybe heard about one or two where we've had a
Thankfully,
situation.
that's not happened to me.
Yeah. It's got to be a really difficult situation. So I think the important thing to take out of this to my realtor friends is that allow us to be your partner and help you make sure that your buyers are getting their funds deposited in the right place, and trust us to make sure that we're going to do that in a very secure way, and that we're going to, and it's not really a part of the process that you should try to be involved in. Let us do our job. Right.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, I just want to say, we do not take ACH transfers.
Yeah.
And our wiring instructions actually say that in big letters at the bottom of it. So make sure you're sending an actual manual wire. It does cost about $30 depending on the bank, but your money will be in limbo if you send a regular draft, an ACH draft. Super important to give that information to your buyers.
Well, and I think in the transaction process right now, you're paying so much money for so many things. Why would you?
Mm-hmm. You must have seen my post last week. When you're paying $100,000 over ask on every property, don't skimp on the wire fee.
Yeah, don't skip on the wire fee, because I think obviously that's the best way to try to do this. And so we get we don't have to go into all the stories because we don't want to call anybody out, but we have gotten a lot of interesting requests of how to deliver money.
Absolutely.
Yes, we have. Bags of cash, also not accepted.
Yeah. I just thought that was really funny that day. It's okay. About that story. I don't even know, I wouldn't even feel comfortable. If I have $500 in my wallet, I'm like, yeah, it's a little much for me.
Right.
Trying to withdraw money.
Hundreds of thousands, right?
And bring them up. And no, we don't take puppies or baby goats or
Bitcoin.
The Bitcoin's the big thing right now.
Yeah.
Do we take Bitcoin? And no, Fidelity does not take Bitcoin at this time.
We have a lender client that brought that up.
Right.
Her company is able to accept digital coin for real estate transactions.
Yes.
And she was asking, this is the first and only one I've heard of in the lender world that's able to do that. Everything.
Things are changing.
We'll
see.
Yeah. But there's no regulatory anything when it comes to the digital coin. So I think while I know there's a lot of people making a lot of money, you can cash it out and turn it into real dollars and then send us a
Yes,
wire.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so next topic, I think we really need to talk about what you guys need as help from our realtor partners to set expectations with sellers and buyers. Because, the contract comes in and there's critical dates, timeline, and things that you guys have to adhere to as terms in the contract. But I know that there's things that we can provide as education to our realtors so they can pass it on to their sellers and buyers and help set better expectations so that they're prepared when we call and ask for things. So Rachel, you want to take some of this one and let's talk about setting expectations?
Yeah. On the listing side of things, I think that one thing that realtors really need to prepare, and some of them still do not, prepare their sellers for is that we'll be reaching out for possibly 9 times out of 10 upfront payment for the HOA docs.
Okay.
They most of the time don't give us enough time, so time is of the essence. We call the same day.
Well, let's back up.
We never want to surprise. Go ahead.
Okay, back up. Let's talk about what is an appropriate timeline. It's really important because we're not getting enough, and then we talk about rush fees and things like that. So,
really, I always tell people 21 days. You really never know. Each HOA company is different and has different timelines. Some of them don't even rush anymore. So as long as you can possibly give, I say do it. 14 to 21 days for sure. Anything less than that, you can expect us to reach out to you for an extension on the timeline or a rush fee, and no one wants to pay more fees to the HOA.
And I think it's really interesting because I've had some people say, there's no way I could put that in the contract because I'm trying to win the offer. And I'm like, how is that a negotiation point? Because we're subject to what the HOA can do as far as their timeline, right?
Right. I suppose the seller could always order the HOA resale documents as soon as they list the property.
And we've got some people doing that.
Yeah, we do. I do have some agents that ask me, I'm listing this property. Can you go ahead and order the HOA docs so we have them immediately available? Smart. Especially if you're going to accept a cash offer and you want to close within, 7 days. I think it's just good policy.
Okay, so you see the confliction here, right?
Right.
We've got 14 to 21 days to get HOA docs and you want to close in 7 days. Uh-oh.
So maybe it's wise to get them done up front. Maybe it's wise to order them early.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I thought that was an important point to kind of educate our realtors that they need to put in an appropriate timeline.
We also see a lot of people choosing option number 4 on the HOA addendum, basically saying the buyers don't require it. And we just assume that they're trying to remove the contingencies in the contract that are in option 1 and 2, giving an objection period. Yeah. So we will, in this market, automatically call the buyer to ask them to pay for the documents too.
Okay.
So, something we see a lot of now.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
So. I think there's been a lot of interesting scenarios that are obviously coming out of this market. But anyway, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
Teeing, you were talking about teeing your seller up to expect our call.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important on the listing side. And then on the buy side, it is their responsibility to deliver the earnest and option money. So my team does that day 1 of the contract. We reach out, but prepare your people. If you execute it on a Friday, now your money's due on Monday.
Right.
So they need to reach out to us in the morning on Monday to get it delivered. We've got several options to do it. Old-fashioned walk-up, overnight delivery. Well, not if you executed Friday, but if you have until Tuesday, we can give you an overnight label. And then we have our mobile deposit. We have wire, and then we have our mobile deposit feature, which you talked about earlier that comes from in here. Kind of like a banking app where you take a front and back picture of a check and it deposits it remotely from wherever they are. So
well, and I think it's really important for our realtors to know that the listing agents probably have a seller with a backup contract with a higher offer and is happy to terminate the contract. So, making sure that you get your earnest and option money in on time. And look, we had one where we were frantically trying to figure this out. It was 4:15. Option was due by 5. We do everything we can to help facilitate that. But, and this was a special situation that will probably never happen again. But, I think waiting until the last minute to try to figure this out is a real problem,
Oh, for sure. If you give us a little bit of time, we can help you. But if you ask us at 5 o'clock, it makes it kind of impossible for us to assist.
Yeah. I think a lot of what you guys see on a regular basis is, and the important part out of this section of conversation is realtors talk to your sellers. We are going to have to call and collect a credit card. And it's very weird when you call a seller who has no idea who you are out of the
Surprise.
blue. Yeah.
Right.
We need your credit card. I mean, if someone called me up and said, I need your credit card, I'd hang up the phone and then call you back on the number and check double, so,
Right.
help. I think this is a good tip to our realtor clients is just, set your sellers up for success and let them know that we're going to call.
Help us manage expectations, because my third note was going to be on listing and buy side is that please prepare them that we're going to be reaching out for pertinent information for us to process their file, which includes dates of birth, social security numbers, things like that. I mean, people don't like to be reached out for that information, but if you prepare them for it, they're less likely to balk at it. So
yeah. And just take a minute.
Yeah.
Include it as part of your listing presentation, then reiterate it when you execute the contract.
Yeah.
I think that if you tell them a couple of times that this is going to happen, oh yeah, okay, I'll be waiting for a lawyer's title call.
Right.
Yeah, it'll help a lot. It'll make things go a lot smoother too. Okay, so collection of personal information, delivery of earnest and options. Don't wait until the last minute. And then HOA docs, collection of the credit card, that sort of thing, the HOA resale docs. So let's talk about who needs to execute the contract.
the actual sellers of the property. If they're deceased, they can't execute a contract.
No.
Yeah. I've never seen it done anyways.
Yeah. It would scare the living daylights out of me if a dead person went and executed a contract. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, the more information we have up front before a contract is executed, I mean, you can email me or my team and ask, hey, who's supposed to sign our contract? We can tell you pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We can help you out with just some information that you give us on who's supposed to actually execute, obviously the buyers, but on the sales side, who's supposed to execute the contract.
Right.
And I think we get into some of this world that's really challenging with our investor deals, some of these things where, you
People
have,
think they can sell a house and they can't.
Yeah. Thank you for finishing my sentence because I was trying to formulate the words.
Yeah, we see a lot of that where, and yes, mainly on investor deals where, so-and-so's been living in the house and paying taxes on it for the past year, 10 years or whatever. Well, it doesn't mean you own the house.
Yeah.
We just have to find that person who it is. And then you really don't have a valid contract. So we have to figure out who that is and get them to sign off on it.
Right.
And hopefully they're around to do it.
Yeah, I mean, because there have been issues where there's been more than one person that owns the house and one of them isn't willing to sign it. I think Chrissy had an example of somebody who lived in Mexico and was like, yeah, no.
Yeah. Where are they? Yeah. We're in prison. Or rehab. Or, wherever.
We're in Rome. Or
overseas. MIA. Yeah.
So I think, the golden nugget out of this section of the conversation is when you are taking on a listing.
Yeah. Let us help you with it.
How about a checklist, maybe of questions that you standardly ask. So not to put you on the spot, but if you were going to tell a realtor what those questions would be, what would you think that they should ask to identify where there could be a potential problem on signing of the contract?
Well, there's several main reasons why someone sells a house, right?
Yeah.
Death and divorce are two big ones.
Mm-hmm.
I know those aren't exactly the most comfortable questions to ask, but filtering through those at a listing appointment, I think makes you sound more thorough and prepares your seller more for that.
I agree.
Ask those questions. It can be real simple. We don't want to find out once we go under contract and we have an issue after the fact. So also if they have a survey, those are important too.
Yeah.
Existing survey for the property.
How many people have a survey?
A lot. I mean, a lot of people.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I keep all of mine. I mean, I just didn't know. Like, do people keep
I'd
that
say
stuff?
Probably 90%.
Yeah.
Of the deals that come through have existing surveys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you have a survey? Who owns the house?
Who owns the house?
Are they still with us?
Yes.
Go through any divorce?
Are y'all happy?
Yeah. Do you have a wife? Is she here? Yeah. Just maybe. Just the question. Yeah.
Yeah. Does she live with you still? Anything else that you guys can think of?
Is your client out of the country?
Great question.
That's another one.
Yeah. Do they live here?
Do they live here? Or do they live outside of the United States?
So tell me why that's important.
Well, I mean, that's definitely important because of the document signing.
Who's going to sign?
How are they going to sign?
Yeah.
So if you have some someone outside of the U.S., there's certain criteria that you can meet, and we can offer what's called a remote online notarization.
Woo woo! I wish I could sign all my stuff that way.
So, that's something that's come on the scene within the past couple of years, but it's a great innovation. It's a service that we offer our clients.
Yeah.
We utilize it all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely something that we can do for our people that are outside of the U.S. Like I said, there's certain criteria that you have to meet, certain equipment that you have to have.
Yeah.
But that's something that, we can send over to the agents, and they can vet their clients to make sure that they meet that criteria. And that's something we can do for them.
And I think that platform's grown, obviously, right, because of COVID and shelter in place and
Absolutely.
all the transition pivoting we had to do.
Yeah.
And how many? Okay, so for a lot, we had to shift everything that we were doing on how to close a client for so long, right?
Yes.
And so now, what I think is really interesting is that we can kind of, we have options for whatever somebody wants to do. And, a lot of our realtor clients are wanting to come back into the office and be a part of the celebration that happens, if it's a celebration, that happens at closing. And so it's kind of their last touch with their client, unless they stop by and housewarming or something like that. And so coming back into the office and closing with us, and we get to see our clients is, I think a great thing, but also the flexibility with, if you don't want to come to the office, we have options to make it as easy and as comfortable on you as you would like, right?
Right. Yeah. I always say I can't close someone in the middle of the ocean with no internet. That's pretty much it.
Have you gotten that question?
On a cruise, yeah. Well, I don't know. I've had some weird ones, but we can literally, we can DocuSign a cash buyer. We can remote online notarize either a POA for someone else to sign for a seller, or a seller directly, depending on the lender. If it's cash, we can do a complete electronic closing if everybody wants to do that. And then there's a couple lenders that have complete e-notarize packages. I think Thrive and Guaranteed Rate are the two that come to mind for me, but they can do. We can
Makes
also
that
do
really
complete,
easy.
yes. And then we can do remote signings.
Okay. Okay, so I got a couple more things that I want to ask you all about before we wrap up today. I know that there are things that change the process that would provide a hiccup during the contract to close process, right? So I want to kind of talk about what those could be and how we work through them, right? So we kind of had this conversation. We've kind of touched on this a little bit already, not knowing who owns the house, or if they're with us, or if they're still together and happy and all of those things, right? But, the changes of a lender in the middle of the deal, or the forbearance that we've already started dealing with, right? So why don't you guys, you want to take this one, kind of, Kelly, and kind of expand on that a little bit? Rachel, jump in and whenever you want, kind of thing.
So, I would think that the main thing that I've dealt with recently is just finding out that there's a deceased person involved. So that's something that we really want to coach our agents, like we discussed before, just like notifying us up front if there is a deceased person. Recently I found out that, someone's wife had passed away from COVID, and I know, it's so sad. So, the way that I found out is I was reviewing the file for closing, and I saw that, he filled out his seller information, and it said on there that his marital status had changed since he acquired the property. And I didn't see, that we found a divorce or anything like that, so I had to call the seller, and I just, told him, I saw that your marital status has changed. Can you, tell me a little bit about that? And he proceeded to tell me that his wife passed away from COVID. So that was just a really uncomfortable, phone call for me.
That poor
him,
man,
obviously I was very empathetic to his situation.
Sure.
But, we just like to avoid those types of phone calls, and it just helps if we know up front. Plus, at that stage, in the transaction, then we had to scramble. So there was no will, there was no probated will. So airships come into play. if the death is less than a year, there's, additional underwriting requirements that have to be met. So,
Does it delay closing?
I mean, it could very well delay closing.
Yeah.
In this case, it didn't, but it could.
Yeah.
Definitely. So these are just things that we have to know up front. It's also nice to know, sometimes people aren't divorced, but they're about to be divorced, right? So it's just kind of nice for us to know that up front too, especially if we're closing them and we walk into the closing room and we don't know that. And we walk in and, like one of the first things that I ask people, so like, hey, where are you guys moving to? And if they tell me like separate places, it like makes for a really
this has also happened to me.
Makes for like a really uncomfortable, conversation.
Sure.
So those things are always good to know.
I think it's really, really, it's such a blessing that you guys know how to react on the spot.
No emotion whatsoever. Moving on to the next subject.
Right. We could definitely tell you some stories about the closing room. I
but
promise
we're going to
you.
need a glass of wine for that.
Yeah, that's like a whole nother episode. Tales of the closing room. I promise
of the
you.
closing room.
Oh, yeah.
Rachel, you want to talk about like changes in lender, forbearance, some of the other things that could delay.
I can touch on forbearance.
Cause a major
Sometimes,
hiccup.
our seller information, our in here application does ask people if they, in the past couple of years or at all, have, filed for forbearance with their current mortgage servicer. Sometimes when we pull title initially, we don't see that and it will pop up. Or, when another good thing for listing agents to ask, hey, have you done this process? A lot of people did it. A lot of people took advantage of it when they didn't even need to do it. So they don't think about talking about it, but we all of a sudden have this second lien we have to pay off.
Yeah. And that is what it is.
Well, yeah.
It's a second lien.
And it can put a seller in a position, if they didn't understand the process properly, in a position to even bring money to closing.
How many people do understand what it meant?
I can tell by how surprised people are when we call them with the information that they do not understand the process, like 99% of the time.
Yeah.
They don't, I think they tell them you'll make it up on the back end, but what they do is actually file that second lien. And the interest is pretty high on it. Yeah. So it can put, where they thought they were going to buy a house. Now they don't have that equity anymore to do that. And I've had that several times as well. So it's super important for us to get that information up front. Again, a lot of the times they don't even have any clue that it's there. So,
man, I mean, what if you were like contingent on another property and you had all this money that you thought you were going to get and you ain't going to get that money now?
Pickles. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, it's, we're making light about a lot of these things, but right now, and, it's great while we're sitting around the table talking about them, but some of these poor people, it's tough conversations. So I think, just kind of outlining the major things that could cause a hiccup. We are seeing changes in lenders. We are seeing, just information that we didn't know,
Something else I've seen quite a bit lately, and I think it's just because, people purchased recently and see how much they can sell their house for, but new builds that were purchased last year in which we didn't have a tax bill for, those numbers have to be negotiated upon, and it's usually negotiated upon after the fact. We don't have a tax bill from the previous year to use to prorate taxes. So I've had a lot of people that purchased last year, we have nothing final, and then the agents have to go back and forth and agree upon something to prorate the taxes on. And that's a big question mark right now because the values are going up.
Unimproved land to the
correct.
fully taxed.
And not only that, but I mean, it's going to be, you're buying it how much over, and the buyer doesn't want to. But they're like, I don't think this is going to work. And I mean, it's just it's a battle right now. So if you are, listing a new build, it's something that you guys need to talk about prior to executing a contract, what the agreed upon tax prorations will be.
Yeah, and I think it's really good that Truck came out with the requirement to disclose a PID because, and I've talked about this on previous podcasts where there was just little to no information. I mean, I live in a new construction neighborhood and I'm on our group Facebook page and people are like, what's a PID after they bought their house? What does that mean for me?
It's kind of hard because they're all different animals too. I get really generalized questions about PIDs, MUDs and everything, but they're all different. So I mean, if we've closed a file in the past, we have information on it in our system that we can help people out with. But if we haven't and it's new or something like that, I mean, we got to try to figure it out together. The information.
Yeah. I think I like the fact that they're requiring disclosure on that because I love my builder sales reps, but it isn't something that's talked about by the builder sales reps because, you know, I mean, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but of course they want to sell the house, and you know, who wants to talk about tax rates?
Right. Yeah. Especially where we all live.
Right.
Yeah,
I know, because we're all up north where all
right.
of these things are, you know. We live in Salina and Kelly lives in Prosper, so we deal with this kind of stuff all of the time. Okay, so we have a contract, and we've already talked about earnest and option, so let's talk about the T47. Tell everybody what a T47 is and how they need to execute it, right? Because we're seeing some common threads.
Do you want me to tell? Okay.
Flip a coin.
It's okay.
So the T47 affidavit is a sworn affidavit signed by the seller to attest to any changes if we're using an existing survey that they have.
Yep.
Some of the issues we see, well, number one, we cannot notarize. No one can notarize an electronically signed document.
It has to be notarized.
It has to be notarized. It's an affidavit. So I'll just leave it at that. Needs to be live signature with a notary. And we're happy to take care of that if you want to swing by the office. But, you know, typically you can find someone in your neighborhood to help you with it. You know, somebody in your family, in your life.
Facebook pages.
Or maybe your realtor is a notary. That would be helpful too.
Yeah. We've seen a lot
Anyhow,
of that.
I see a lot of, I don't have one in front of me, so sorry. A lot of people list the date they acquired the property as the date on the survey, but the date on the survey the date on the T47 actually has to match the certification date. So the date that the survey was performed.
Wait a minute, what are they doing?
So when a seller, let's say our survey is from 2006 and our current seller on this contract bought in 2008. Well, they have to say there's no changes from 2006 when the survey was completed.
Sure.
So 2 years they didn't own that property. So if they can't attest that there's no changes and we can't use that existing survey, we're relying on the seller to give us information on whether or not there's any changes. And if they're not able to do that, then guess what? We need a new survey.
Got it. Okay.
So we see a lot of people putting the wrong date in that. And if that happens, we typically will reach out to a seller and say, can you please attest there were no structural changes since the certification date on the survey? And a lot of the time we get feedback, well, I don't know, I didn't live there then. Well, then we can't use it.
On that T47?
Yeah. So, well, and it's just people not reading through it.
Sure.
So, and it's long and wordy. So I get that. Another issue we see is that there's a spot where they actually have to list changes or list none. Right? So either there's changes and you know what they are and you list in there, or you list none. A lot of people just leave it blank.
That's what I was thinking.
And again,
we'll
be reaching out to your seller to ask, have there been any changes? Oh, just a pool, no big deal. Okay, well, that is a big deal. Now we need a new survey, right? And a lot of people don't really understand what constitutes a structural change, which we're happy to answer those questions, or educate our realtors more on what those are. I think we have some information on our website about that anyways, but anyways, if someone wants to ask, we're happy to help them with that. But it really it's always a point of contention in our contract. And also, per our contract, a survey and properly executed T47 have to be delivered within the prescribed time period in the contract. Not
That's
one or the other,
kids.
both of them together in a properly executed version. Buyers agents are getting smarter. When it's not notarized, when it's not filled out properly, they can request one at the seller's expense because they didn't do it properly. So, and then we have upset people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that was a really big golden nugget for our realtor partners, is to make sure that you've got those things together, properly executed, delivered within the parameters of the contract. Okay.
I tell my people a lot, you know, if you have a listing coming up, just have them stop by our office. They can fill out everything with us if they want to, and avoid all of it after contract. Then we have it all, and my girls will send it out with the critical dates letter when we first get our contract, and it's done.
And then you guys can go to lunch in the beautiful restaurants at the Star, because that's where our office is. Okay, well, before we wrap up, do you think are there any last pieces of advice or things that you want to leave our realtor or lender partners with for today? Did we cover everything?
I feel like we covered everything.
lot.
Yeah, we did. We covered a lot of ground.
Okay.
Even things not on our notes.
I know I do that sometimes. I think of something and I want to ask. And so anyway, but, and we, I think that we need to probably do this more on a regular basis, because I think that
Updates are good.
updates are
Yeah.
good, and the amount of knowledge that you two have that you can share with our partners about, contract issues or, just anything contract close, I think is super important. You guys are in the office all the time and working on, most of what you guys do is work on what's coming in the door, but sharing some of this information, common practices, best practices is super important. So I reserve the right to drag you back in here.
You know what? I have a suggestion. What would be great is if we could get like some feedback,
Okay.
on this particular podcast. Like, what do people want to hear about?
Yeah.
I know title insurance isn't, the most
Boring.
provocative, subject. But,
What is title insurance?
like what do people want to hear about?
Yeah.
And we'll be glad to like come back on and talk about what people want to hear about.
Well, maybe next time I'll bring a realtor and a lender and we can all just hash it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Talk about what's going on.
Love it.
But anyway, until then, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today. Thank you guys for joining us on another episode of Spilling the LT. Again, I'm your host, Tamera Gaede. And again, if you like my content, you're going to love my escrow team. So I hope you'll give us an opportunity to earn your business. Make sure that you go on to all of my social media platforms. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Tell us what you want to hear about next. Make sure you do a video and make it a great day.